This story right here is pretty wild. We've got this clip here from NBC News Now as they discuss the situation as well.
We are following breaking news out of South Korea, where there's been a series of chaotic moves involving the country's government. Protesters flooded the streets of Seoul after the president declared martial law. But then lawmakers voted to block the measure, and eventually the president gave in and reversed the martial law order.
Now, the interesting thing about this is, at least from my understanding of the situation, North Korea has recently mobilized its troops. I don't know if mobilizing is the right word, but prepping its troops, doing public drills, and readying their military for active combat. And it's something where people have sort of been looking at the periphery and they're like, are we on the cusp of North Korea announcing war on somebody? But usually these forms of escalation, by the way, first of all, they're not unusual. They happen all the time. Usually nothing comes of them. But of course, there is danger of being part of the nothing ever happens crowd, because eventually those people get nuked before they even have the time to wonder what happened or why that might have been the case. Being part of the nothing ever happens crowd is not particularly wise to do. So it is important to look at these things and be like, that's strange. Maybe something is up. Maybe this is the type of thing that will exacerbate or instigate World War III, depending on your perception of whether or not World War III is actually happening right now. Something to think about. So I wasn't quite sure if that was it. I've sort of removed that as a reason for declaring martial law in my mind, because the mobilizing of the troops, I think, is something that started weeks ago. I think maybe even over a month ago. So I'm like, well, why do the martial law now? People have been worried about North Korea, mobilizing their troops against foreign states for weeks now. But why now do the martial law? There was no new news about Kim Jong-un declaring war on anyone or anything like that. Like, this just makes no sense to me. But let's see if NBC News Now has any additional details here.
Let's bring in NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer, who's been watching all of this. Janice, a lot has happened in just the past few hours. Can you walk us through and maybe why some of this is happening?
Well, this has been an extraordinary turn of events in South Korea, with President Yoon Suk-yeol agreeing to lift martial law, forced by an emergency vote in the midst of protests. Now, in declaring martial law in the first place, Yoon said that he had no choice in order to safeguard constitutional order. It was basically a move against the government, citing what he called despicable pro-North Korean anti-state forces. He's been in a bitter standoff and political gridlock with opposition members since he was elected in 2022. So the main opposition party condemned the move as unconstitutional and immediately defied the president with this vote to revoke martial law. Large crowd.
Now, I wonder if they're going to get to this, but I wonder if the concerns are accurate or true, because, something like that doesn't shock me. I'm sure that we probably have Russian agents in the United States in our government. Well, actually, no. Maybe is that a bit too conspiratorial to say that we possibly have Russian agents in the American government? Maybe it is. But I will say this. If there were Russian agents in the American government, that would not entirely shock me. It would not entirely shock me. I don't think it's terribly hard for a foreign government to infiltrate a different nation, right? We've seen this with China in Canada, allegedly. Allegedly, China basically controls the government of Canada now. To do that, I don't think would be too difficult. You just got to fund the right people and get the right people in the right places. Not terribly difficult. So, or it could all just be grassroots support for North Korea. I did notice a strange amount of online pro North Korea propaganda lately over the past 6 to 9 months, which I did find very odd and strange. So maybe that is causing genuine support in South Korea for North Korea. But either way, of course, I'm not going to support initiating martial law, because you have, cohorts in the military supporting a foreign nation. Like that's like declaring martial law because the majority of people in Congress support China. Like, bro, if you abide by free speech principles, which I do, you should be able to support whatever political cause or political group that you want, so long as it's not like a terrorist organization, which North Korea is not a terrorist organization, and neither is China.
Defied the president with this vote to revoke martial law. Large crowds have gathered outside the National Assembly building in Seoul. People were also inside the building. Windows have been smashed. Police are all around it. There's still some confusion about exactly where things stand because under the order, political activities are banned, protests are prohibited, media is censored, but military officials have been told to pull forces back. Now, the Biden administration is in contact with the South Korean government and is monitoring the situation closely. President Biden has yet to comment on the declaration of martial law, but South Korea is a staunch ally of the U.S. There are some 30,000 American troops stationed in the country to guard against North Korea. This is a political situation that's still shaky, it's still unclear, and people in South Korea stunned by what's been unfolding overnight. Kate?
Yeah, I can imagine, and it is the middle of the night there. Janice Mackey-Frayer, thank you.
But why now? That's what I don't understand. Why now? Like, what happened today that, wasn't the case yesterday? What changed? I don't understand. So, yeah, this is from NBC News. South Korean president reverses martial law declaration after immediate opposition from parliament. President Yoon Suk-yeol said he would strive to minimize the disruption for law-abiding citizens who uphold the constitutional values of the Republic of Korea. So it sounds like he's still going to crack down on people who are pro-North Korea. But it's just not officially martial law. I love this. Yo. So how he was talking about how the president, what's his name? Yul was saying that what was the word? What was the verbiage that he said?
Yoon said that he had no choice in order to safeguard constitutional order. It was basically a move against the government, citing what he called despicable pro-North Korean anti-state forces.
Right. So he said that there were pro-North Korean anti-state forces. I love this. The People's Power Party, which I think is the opposition party, leader Hang Dong-hoon insisted that Yoon, quote, personally and thoroughly explain this dire situation in detail. which is like an ultimate troll statement. When he's basically saying okay, sure, buddy, prove it. I love that, because part of me is bro, I'm American. So there's only so much about South Korean and North Korean politics that I understand. Actually, no, that's not a reason. It's just my ignorance. But still, there's only so much South Korean, North Korean politics I understand. But I was like, what changed? Why did this happen? And that's literally what the Power Party is saying too. They're like, oh, please personally and thoroughly explain this dire situation in detail. Now, actually, if this was an excuse or opportunity to sort of cull society from people who are pro-North Korea ahead of a potential face-off with North Korea, I can understand why he might do that, because what you do is you prevent yourself from facing resistance while you're trying to fight North Korea. Now, does that mean that it's okay? No, it doesn't. But it just means it's understandable. So maybe that's what's happening. But it's just not entirely clear. So it says here, there's a quote. Yeah, it says here, there's a quote from Yoon. I'm declaring a state of emergency in order to protect the constitutional order based on freedom and eradicate shameful pro-North Korea anti-state groups that are stealing freedom and happiness of our people, Yoon said on the country's YTN news channel. He added that this would protect the country from the threats of North Korea's communist forces. Yeah, that's not clear at all. That's not clear at all. Honestly, bro, I am keen to co-sign the People's Power Party, their statement, and be like, bro, explain yourself. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. But thankfully, there's enough democracy in South Korea that this disaster was avoided. Hopefully, Yoon doesn't try to pull something like this in the future, and hopefully he doesn't still try to crack down on people who have pro-North Korean sentiments. But I think at a certain point, all we could do is just cross our fingers, because you never know what's going to happen, especially when they don't have as much democracy or freedom as America. So.